when you can no longer keep.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, we finally made it. It's Zelda week with Tears the Kingdom releasing on Friday, and it appears leading up to the release, Nintendo is getting more and more aggressive behind the scenes, to the point now where one homebrew project has completely shut down. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about a major PlayStation 5 release that appears to have been revealed maybe a bit early online. And we also have some retro news to go over, which is a really cool GameCube modification. It looks like it's going to take the system to the next level. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if new here to the SpawnWave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with a studio at Sony that unfortunately is shuttering, and that's Pixelopus. I talked about this a bit on the second channel to close out last week, but I also wanted to touch on it here just to make sure everyone was aware. We can see this posted up over on Twitter from Pixelopus saying, "Dear friends, our Pixelopus adventure has come to an end as we look to futures. We wanted to say a heartfelt thank you to the millions of passionate players who have supported us and our mission to make beautiful, imaginative games with heart. We are so grateful." IGN followed up with Sony, got a response confirming that June 2nd will basically be the last day for the studio, which is, I think, made up of 10 to 15 people, so it wasn't a big studio or anything, and them making projects like Concrete Genie, I guess, doesn't necessarily line up with Sony's vision of these AAA blockbuster titles for PlayStation Studios, but I think it actually fills in a nice gap with Sony's releases to have those AA, yeah, more artsy, but also experimental kind of games like a Concrete Genie. In fact, Sony having PlayStation Plus Premium, you feel like they may have been able to develop a game similar in that scope and drop it on the PlayStation Plus Premium day one as a way to also hold up their subscription service, but no, it appears Sony is moving on from Pixelopus, and to me, that's pretty disappointing. So hopefully the developers there are able to land on their feet and get positions either within Sony or other studios. Also, we have seen WB find great success, especially recently, in gaming with Hogwarts Legacy, which has crossed $1 billion in revenue now, which is mind-blowing stuff. I think over 16 million copies having sold with the PS4 and the Xbox One version now launching, which apparently run pretty well. But they also have their eyes set on what's next for the DC universe, and that could include a much requested game. We can see this posted up over on Reddit. That was transcribed from a recent quarter earnings call with the CEO there at Warner Bros. Discovery, where they say, when we launch a product on Max or HBO, and when we have a game, that game belongs to us. But now there's this in-betweener. It may be in the next couple of years that we launch a Superman movie, and people spend more time, and there's more economics of people just hanging out in the Superman world and universe. Kind of seems like, based on what was being said here during this earnings call, that maybe they're planning now or have already planned, and it's kind of in motion, a Superman game, which seems like something you'd go to Rocksteady to work on. Unfortunately, they're tied up with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and the fact that that game is going to require, I assume, quite a bit of post-release support, it's something that's probably gonna keep them busy for a while. So that would like to see an attempt at a Superman game. I'm curious who WB would have developed that, though, if it's not Rocksteady. Oh, and if it hasn't been bad enough for Microsoft's recent release, Redfall, it looks like it's climbing a certain chart that it probably didn't want to, and that's technically the bottom reviewed games on Steam. It looks kind of weird. You can see it because it's the #1 game technically here is the worst game rated on Steam. I think it's what, War of the Three Kingdoms at a 1.44 score. Well, if you go down to number 14 with a 2.83 score, you have Redfall, and it's been climbing that chart for very quickly over the past couple of days, and the game itself is not in a great state in general. Like on console, obviously being locked to 30 frames on the most powerful system as a first-person shooter, not a great look, but then all the other bugs, glitches, brain-dead AI.
With clear policies, warm service, and a transparent claims
AI, has not been a good release from a quality standpoint, let alone the game itself, which isn't very good. So not a great outing here for Arcane Austin. I think it's a good idea to maybe patch some of the stuff up, obviously deliver the patch with the 60 FPS, and then after any content you've promised previous to release, move on to something different, kind of put Redfall in the rearview mirror. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and a DMCA takedown notice for a tool that is used to emulate Switch games on your PC. We've talked about this many times, that Nintendo will certainly try to make an impact in the court system or with different takedown notices and strikes to have people maybe back away that aren't necessarily the target of that DMCA takedown, and we can see this posted up over on Twitter. This is from Simon, who first noticed this last week. Said Nintendo has just issued multiple DMCA takedown requests to GitHub, including for Lockpick, the tool for dumping keys from your own Switch, which is absolutely ludicrous. Pirates aren't gonna be sourcing keys from their own consoles. And technically, yes, you can look around and find product keys that are just shared online. The idea of Lockpick is you have your modified or soft modded Switch, which you can just use a paperclip for like the first 30 million Switch systems that are out there. But using Lockpick would allow you to get product keys from that Switch, plug them into something like Yuzu or whatnot later, and then it will fire up and you can start playing different games on your PC. Now, Nintendo, in their DMCA takedown request, says that it's circumvention software that infringes Nintendo's intellectual property rights. Specifically, the reported repository provides Lockpick to users. The use of Lockpick with a modified Nintendo Switch console allows users to bypass Nintendo's technological measures for video games. Specifically, Lockpick bypasses the console TPMs to permit unauthorized access to extraction of and decryption of all the cryptographic keys, including product keys contained in the Nintendo Switch. And that's one of the reasons that these emulators don't provide product keys to you, because they're technically falling under copyright. So I guess the idea of having a tool that would then get you to those keys in Nintendo's mind is something that has to be removed from the internet. I mean, you're not going to remove from the internet either way, but at least make it so it's harder to get and it's not just sitting there on GitHub where you click download and you're off and running. Now, there is one other goal from Nintendo to do this, and that's basically put the fear into people out there who are developing, even if it's through open source means, you know, have your code out there, people can check it out and all this. People are developing emulators that would then use those product keys for the Switch. And it seems to have at least affected one emulator, which you can see this post up on their homepage now. This is for Skyline, which, as they say, was an open source and experimental emulator that runs on ARM v8 Android devices and emulates the functionality of a Nintendo Switch system. They go on to say all development on Skyline has been ceased due to the potential legal risks of it involved. This website will remain up for the time being, but may be taken down in the future. Their Discord server will still be active for the foreseeable future, but will be transitioned into being for our upcoming project at some point. We want to thank everyone who enjoyed Skyline in the past few years. And again, this is what Nintendo wanted to happen. They throw some of the DMCA stuff out there. Potentially that could lead to very expensive and lengthy court cases, and people just back off because it's not worth the hassle or anything. They can go on to do some other project where they won't have Nintendo, who spends all day in the courtroom, looming over them. And it is unfortunate because emulators themselves, especially when they're open source, you can just see the code that's all original. It's not illegal. the idea of these product keys kind of getting involved, that can get into the gray area, and that's what Nintendo's playing into. But based on some of the things we've seen from emulators with Switch games is genuinely interesting, especially when you see the different mods for multiplayer and stuff. And again, I know Nintendo doesn't like that, but it's pretty cool to see that with games like Breath of the Wild. So I'm not sure if this will also spill over to some of the more popular Switch emulators, but something tells me Nintendo may be trying to measure up how they can get them to pull those emulators down as well. Think about what happened with Tears of the Kingdom, where a bunch of people were passing it around and emulating it on their PC weeks before the game came out. Something tells me that got Nintendo in the mood to start striking left and right if they could, and this is seemingly where they've started. So we'll see how this progresses over the next week or two, because something tells me Nintendo, they're moving pretty fast on this one. Next up, let's talk about a major release for Sony that seems to have been revealed a bit early. And this kind of plays into the idea of Sony continuing to do these exclusivity deals, which look at even marketing on Hogwarts Legacy. It's worked well. And then you look at something like Final Fantasy 16 as their big exclusive partnership with Square that works to really fill in the calendar for them, because otherwise Spider-Man 2, I believe, would be coming out maybe September or October. That's a fairly large gap between releases from first-party developers, which is why Sony tries to do a lot of these exclusive deals. And appears they're setting up, I would say, a massive exclusivity deal, which we can see this posted up. This was by Idle Sloth, and it's from Nick over on Xbox Era. Says Metal Gear Solid 3 Remake might be an upcoming PlayStation showcase and will have some sort of exclusivity attached to it. On top of that, Jez Corden from Windows Central said heard similar about Metal Gear exclusivity for PlayStation, by the way. Even goes on to say that could include some other Konami projects, because we've already seen Silent Hill 2 that is just going to be on PlayStation 5, and Sony appears to have a hand in exclusivity deals and stuff with that. Castlevania could be another one that Sony could have an exclusivity deal with. And right now, Konami is working to essentially revitalize many of these intellectual properties. Castlevania is apparently getting a game. Don't really know if it's 2D or 3D, or hey, maybe there's a 2D and a 3D game. That'd be pretty awesome, right? But in this case, with Metal Gear Solid 3, that's a big time deal for Sony to make. They know it. Obviously, I feel like they would have jumped on that as soon as possible, and maybe even lend support to Konami to either find a developer who can do it correctly, or even bring in some Sony developers who can kind of help with running a support role, which is certainly building up a lot of hype for the PlayStation Showcase that's rumored to be taking place at the end of this month, so we're not that far off, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And the other thing I'm curious about here, because yes, I do believe Metal Gear Solid 3 Remake is real, and I think we are going to see it pretty soon. I'm wondering how they play around with presenting this game and what the title is on it, because Metal Gear Solid 3, you see that, and people who have never played it before are probably wondering, can I play that? Like, do I have to play the other 2? It comes up every time with Final Fantasy, and we basically have to say no, that you can just play each one from the start. You don't have to worry about the other 15 Final Fantasies for Final Fantasy 16. In this case, I wonder if they would just name it Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater. And that's it. Because if you think about it, Metal Gear Solid 3, in the line
There's an elite crew with all.
In the line of 1, 2, 3, and 4 is the prequel. It'd be the starting point for them if they wanted to remake the entire.
attack on the Amoonguss is the Pollen Puff. So once the Dondozo possibly terastallizes into a Steel type, or even when it gets the boost from the Commander ability on Tatsugiri, a Pollen Puff will very likely not be able to break that substitute. So Ashton does have some ways around Spore, but I think damaging the Amoonguss might be a little bit more of an issue.
But here is our first turn one of the day. Ashton leading the Roaring Moon, Goldengo, and Kazuki leading the Arcanine and Iron Hands.
I think this is a really favorable lead for Kazuki, like especially looking at Kazuki's team. These are easily the two best Pokemon set up to take attacks from this Goldengo. They both resist the Make It Rain. The Goldengo on Ashton's end is holding the Choice Specs, and so there's no having to worry about like a nasty plot. You don't have to worry about taking huge damage from Make It Rain with these two Pokemon. And the Iron and the Roaring Moon rather also immediately gets intimidated and is threatened by a possible close combat or a Will-O-Wisp.
Yeah, I mean, that Choice Specs Goldengo, though, they typically hold a good amount of bulk in them, so it may not get knocked out by a Flare Blitz. I know that sometimes that doesn't always, it depends on how the Pokemon are trained. Oh, but the Arcanine is Choice Band. Looks like Goldengo doesn't really want to stay in for that. No. Switches in Dondozo instead to possibly take what could be a super effective attack. Breaking Swipe, though, a great way to mitigate some damage on the opposite side of the field, lowering that attack. It took an Intimidate, so I wanted to send that right back. Flare Blitz, though, from this Arcanine into the Dondozo still does a nice chunk of damage. That Choice Band putting in some work here, and that is going to lead for a great setup with the Wild Charge double up into the Dondozo. It's not enough to get the knockout, though. You're not going to love taking some damage next turn with an Extreme Speed. If you have, or no, it's Choice Band, but yeah, anyway.
Right. That is some huge damage. That is a massive Flare Blitz. A -1 Flare Blitz did that much damage to a Dondozo. That is very impressive from Arcanine. Just a really great read from Kazuki, though. Like that, the Kingambit is holding that Choice Spec, so there's no possible chance for a, doubling up into Protect there. And a Flare Blitz very easily knocks out that Goldengo, especially it is that Terra Steel, so it can't terastallize away from a Fire weakness. And so that's some guaranteed damage into that slot with two huge attacks, a Flare Blitz and a Wild Charge. So Dondozo coming in, I believe if the Tatsugiri comes in, it should be able to outspeed both these Pokemon and get a rest up if it really needs to. So not super dire yet for that Dondozo, because it was able to barely hang on. But the Breaking Swipe put a lot of work there because now Ashton does still have the use of this Dondozo.
Yeah, Roaring Moon switching out here, going to bring in the Tatsugiri, that droopy form. This is Ashton's way to handle getting so much damage on turn one. If you can make your Pokemon move faster, you know you're not going to take an Extreme Speed because of the Choice Band on that Arcanine. So you could get a rest off early. You will burn your Chesto Berry right out of the gate, but you probably have to just to handle all of that damage. Still, all of these boosts with Commander, Tatsugiri jumping into Dondozo not gets us +2 boost to all of its stats. Arcanine's going to switch out, though, probably sees that it wants to preserve some of its damage for later, plus that Intimidate sends in the Amoonguss. If you lose that Chesto Berry early, you could possibly get spored later on.
Yeah. A really smart switch from Kazuki there, just because the Arcanine, surely if this play that Ashton makes happens, there's no way you're able to knock out the Dondozo this turn, preserve that Intimidate for later on, and possibly save that Extreme Speed for some clean potatoes later on.
Yeah, terastallizing into the Grass type for that Iron Hands. Dondozo goes for the Earthquake, does not go for the rest, so a really nice call here. Not going to take nearly as much damage as it would have in Drain Punch into the Dondozo. You've just wiped out a huge offensive piece.
Incredibly smart play from Kazuki there. I love the Terra Grass. Like, we could see it wouldn't have knocked out anyway, because it did do... Actually, no, it probably would have knocked out, because it would have done, quadruple the damage that one did. And so I like that play from Ashton, too. Like, you're taking advantage of Kazuki possibly making a more defensive play or trying to catch something like a rest. So like if you switch in Tatsugiri and rest, you can get more damage off with Flare Blitz, Wild Charge, or something like that. But Earthquake very likely would have knocked out both of those Pokemon with the Tatsugiri boost from Commander. And like you said, the Arcanine could not have Extreme Speeded because it is locked into that Flare Blitz. But I really play from Kazuki because it covers the exact play Ashton made, and now I think Kazuki's in a very commanding position.
Yeah, the Tatsugiri, it's the Choice Scarf variant, right? It does not have Sleep Talk on it, so it's not, if you can get it to rest, you would be in a really nice spot. It is holding Chilling Water, Muddy Water, Icy Wind, Draco Meteor. Those are the 4 moves on there. Goldengo is going to terastallize into that Steel typing just to boost the power of these Make It Rains. Again, it's Choice Specs, so it's not got a time to set up a nasty plot. It's just got to go for big damage. Muddy Water, though, avoids the Iron Hands, will hit into that Amoonguss, probably needs that accuracy drop, which it gets this turn as well, trying to maybe not take a spore, but Make It Rain into both of these Pokemon. Does get enough to knock out the Amoonguss. Actually, Iron Hands able to hang on here. That first special attack drop. No sleep now.
No sleep now. I think that Muddy Water is probably coming in really handy because I don't believe the Iron Hands would have been able to survive that Make It Rain if they got that little bit of Muddy Water chip damage. The -1 attack from the Breaking Swipe still in effect here just because the Iron Hands is not switched out. So decent amount of damage from that Drain Punch. Arcanine coming in though, the Choice Band Extreme Speed might be able to pick up this Tatsugiri, which would be very nice for Kazuki, especially considering the Golden Go only can Make It Rain and do honestly still probably a good chunk to Arcanine because it's probably trained to be more offensive and it's Terra Steel Choice Specs Golden Go even at -1. But this Arcanine in a pretty spot here because I doubt at Extreme Speed misses a KO on this Tatsugiri. Again, the Tatsugiri can't protect. It does have that Choice Scarf. And so Kazuki's in a pretty good position here just to start making some reads and get some damage on the field.
Kingambit
Good
switches
switch,
in
yeah.
for that Iron Hands, really not wanting to take that knockout there. You can then swap your Arcanine later to get out of Extreme Speed because you know Flare Blitz is going to be huge, but Extreme Speed's enough to get that knockout onto the Tatsugiri easily there. Looks like it wasn't too worried at all. Make It Rain, not going to do a whole lot of damage into both of these Pokemon as they're going to take resisted damage here.
Oh.
And now, look at that. That is really comfy damage, I think. You can swap out the Arcanine at this point, bring in your Iron Hands, and then possibly just try and swap it back in, get another Intimidate down onto the Roaring Moon, and get a Flare Blitz.
Yeah, I think Kingambit also just kind of cleans up from here too. The Golden Go now locked into Make It Rain at -2. Again, it is holding that Choice Spec, so it can't switch up those moves. It will have to keep lowering its special attack from this point on. And Roaring Moon and Kingambit, or Roaring Moon and Golden Go, not the most equipped to deal with a Kingambit.
That Extreme Speed with Choice Band without that Breaking Swipe did 50% onto that Roaring Moon. Golden Go's Make It Rain once again going onto this Kingambit as well, but it still is doing less and less every single turn. Ashton cannot stop these drops, and he's locked into this move. Kazuki gets this Swords Dance up, already has access to Sucker Punch as well. You know you can Sucker Punch pretty comfortably here, and Iron Hands can come in, fake out pressure as well.
Yeah, some big fake out pressure. An Iron Head or even probably like a Kowtow Cleave, maybe even a Sucker Punch should be able to knock out this Roaring Moon because it doesn't have the best defense stat. A good Swords Dance there though, I think just to make sure that your next attack is going to take whatever KO you need it to. And -3, the Golden Go certainly won't knock out the Kingambit, of course. Iron Hands may even be able to survive. It is a very bulky Pokemon, especially with that Assault Vest. So now you have some fake out pressure with that Iron Hands, which should enable this Kingambit to clean up the game here.
Yeah, I mean, a really nice position from Kazuki. I think he made a couple of really strong calls game one that really kind of sealed this. You know, it's not over yet. There's always there's critical hits. There's a million chances, right? Especially with that -3 special attack. If Golden Go can get a crit, it's going to actually be really huge and could change this. Roaring Moon's Protect makes a lot of sense here. Exactly, trying not to get faked out this turn. You at least can stall for a turn. You know, not dealing too much. You're not taking any damage on that side. Depends on if Kazuki called it though. The Make It Rain will connect onto both of these Pokemon. Depending on if this gets the knockout, this could actually change things. Iron Hand's able to hang on though with 9 HP. Another special attack drop here. Kowtow Cleave targeted down into that Golden Go with the Swords Dance. It's not enough to pick up the knockout here, so things could get a little dicey.
Yeah, this might be a little bit closer than Kazuki might have hoped. You know, the Golden Go clearly able to knock out the Iron Hands with one more Make It Rain if it's able to, but Sucker Punch easily cleans that up. And the Roaring Moon can't target both these Pokemon without giving the Kingambit an attack boost with the Breaking Swipe and then to the Defiant. And so we're going to have to see how this plays out here. Acrobatics just taking the KO and Iron Hands instead, though.
Yeah, Acrobatics does take that knockout. The huge piece, I think, here is that Extreme Speed damage that was done a couple of turns prior, because it's now already at 50%, and with a Swords Dance Sucker Punch, that's probably your best bet to try and get that damage, but you are still, I mean, you're still faster, I think, right?
You're faster for sure. I think you probably don't even have to go for a Sucker Punch there, because I guess there's a world in which Sucker Punch mind games can lose you that if Ashton goes for Tailwind or Protect or something to try and stall out your Sucker Punches. But knowing that Ashton's Roaring Moon does not have a Dark move, its only attacking moves are that Acrobatics and the Breaking Swipe, both of which you resist. You cannot Terrastalize into that Flying type to get the stab boost on the Acrobatics. Pretty confident his Kingambit could survive that Acrobatics and fire off one more Iron Head to win the game. So a really expertly played game from Kazuki.
I mean, it might have been a roll-on if an Acrobatics crit could have done it, which might have been that, but also you do at least get the information of how much that Acrobatics does, which could be helpful.
That is valuable.
You know, I mean, the Kingambit, it's not holding any sort of item that's going to boost its defenses or in any way. You know, it's holding Safety Goggles, which is interesting to see because you really don't need that this game, you know? So it's the fact that Kingambit still had to come. We didn't get a Spothor, we didn't get the Spicy spicy pick.
I know.
Which is okay. I get it. I'm not, I'm not too heartbroken. Maybe you kind of prep and have that in the, when you have something like that in team preview, you assume the other trainer preps hard for a game 1, turn 1, and then maybe you can bring it a little later. It could be a game 3 pick, depending on how game 2 goes. But I mean, I'd love to see it.
I would too. I think the issue is that Tyranitar is a pretty good stat to Espathra. It does have the Dazzling Gleam, so it's able to damage it in some way. But you would need a lot of Calm Minds to get some meaningful damage after that with the Dazzling Gleam. I think there's kind of a push and pull between the Espathra and the Dondozo too, because Dondozo does have that unaware, and Espathra's whole MO is boosting its stats. Except you don't ignore the speed boost, so you're still going to be attacking first with that Espathra. And even though your boosted special attack won't matter if you're using the stored power, it's not going to use the boosted special attack stat. The stored power base power will still be increasing. It's not ignore, so like a stored power to Dondozo is not going to be just that base 20 power. It will have that increased power. And so you're not getting the special attack boost, but you're getting the stored power boost, which could still help you break through that special defense boost.
And now thinking into game 2, right? Ashton's not going to do the same thing he did with Dondozo turn 1 of game 1.
I would think not.
I would assume that, he's not going to let that happen again, right? Even that Flare Blitz damage did at least 30% of that HP right there. It was so much.
The -1 Flare Blitz, that's still crazy to me.
I know.
That was a lot of damage.
It was a lot of damage. And these trainers leading into these turn 2 openings, gonna have to make a couple of changes here, and looks like we already know Kazuki did. Ashton also, Iron Hands and Gholdengo, same lead there.
There it is.
Espathra and Arcanine. I love shiny Espathra.
I do too, it's great. I think this is a pretty okay spot for the Espathra just right off the bat. Well, I don't know, actually, because it is Terra Water, so if it does Terastallize away from a Shadow Ball weakness, you do have to worry about the Electric Boost and the Iron Hands. But it's a decent spot to be in Espathra. I think you would not want to see something like a Roaring Moon, even though it doesn't have a Dark type attack. I do have Dazzling. I don't know. I don't think there's like a super bad spot for Espathra to be in, and especially given that you have the Intimidate right off the bat, I think this is a pretty decent spot for Kazuki to start kind of playing around the Espathra. You've got the Intimidate, you've got the Iron Hands. I would imagine there's a Redirector in the back. I didn't catch that 4th Pokemon just looking at the screen, but Espathra starts to protect, starts that speed boost, stored power boosting.
Yeah, looks like no switches on the opposite side of the field. Fake out from one Iron Hands into the Iron Hands that had just swapped in. Make it rain from Gholdengo, so you know that it is not locked into Shadow Ball, and that's a pretty key piece of information. Already at -1 now without even taking any damage on the Espathra. If Espathra sets up some Calm Minds now, has that speed boost, may be able to tank those pretty well.
Well, yeah, and I think the Protect there on Espathra is nice. 1 for the speed boost, but 2, like you said, knowing what that Gholdengo is locked into is huge, because now you know you can Calm Mind in front of it. It's already at -1 special attack. You have the Iron Hands at -1, not going to be doing too much damage, and you were able to bring this Arcanine back in for that -2. So Espathra already set up to start boosting itself without the risk of taking too much damage. And the leftover is also just going to be able to help kill that off as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you're also possibly trying to force the Terastallization onto that Iron Hands too. That does kind of put you in that position, but already clicking that stored power. Close combat into the Arcanine. That -2 really helpful here. And now it has some defense and special defense drops, which it may not want to see at some point later. Make it rain from the Gholdengo once again. Espathra tanks that really comfortably here. Another special attack drop as well from that Gholdengo. Looking here as well, Espathra's running leftovers. It's going to be gaining some HP back every single turn along with those speed boosts. Yeah,
so we're up to 2 speed boosts and a special attack and a special defense boost. So like on turn 3, we have the possibility of a +1 special attack, 100 base power move. So that just kind of tells you right off the bat how quickly Espathra can start ramping up its damage. Arcanine, also in a pretty good spot here. We do have the Steel-type Gholdengo and the -1 defense Iron Hands, with neither of which want to take a Flare Blitz. And there's also still the possibility for some pivoting out with that Iron Hands and whatever's in the back as well. So I think Kazuki set himself up very well here, especially because this Gholdengo is now going to be at -3 after this coming turn. Another
Calm Mind here, just again getting these boosts and stacking them and making this Espathra an absolute threat. Flare Blitz from the Arcanine into that Gholdengo. It's enough to get the one-hit knockout as well. Huge piece of information to know, especially if there is a game 3, depending on what Ashton is hiding in the back. And I feel like if he let that Gholdengo go, he was probably ready and has a different plan. Iron Hands Volt Switch into the Arcanine will get that last piece of chip damage for the knockout, will force a reveal of different Pokemon here. You can the Iron Hands back in after it has those Intimidate drops removed.
Yeah, and I honestly, the Gholdengo being gone is really big for Kazuki, because that's one of the few Psychic Resists on Ashton's team. So the Gholdengo is no longer able to come in and possibly take a stored power, but at this point, the Espathra has so many boosts that it might not even matter. And we see the Dondozo here. Like I was saying earlier, the special defense, or rather the special attack boost, aren't going to be coming into play, especially if, which is relevant, especially if that Tatsugiri comes in and activates Commander. But we're up to a 247, 160 base power, stored power currently. And so even then, Dondozo is not known for having the highest special defense. Those are going to hurt regardless.
Yeah, looks like the Iron Hand switches in here and Dondozo. You have to maybe assume that Tatsugiri is still in the back because that Unaware is probably Ashton's game plan to get out of here. So if you target down into the Iron Hands and the Tatsugiri switches in, then that could be a little bit rougher, especially to have used store power then, and then you could maybe take some more damage. But I feel like, you know, if you have this Spathra on the field, you've set up this cannon of a Pokemon, and you need to put it to work, right? You have fake out pressure as well at this point too. You know that Dondozo probably, it doesn't have Protect, so you have a pretty free fake out into there because it's running 2 different support moves of Substitute and Rest. You could also maybe fake out into the Iron Hands, but you may not want to because it's switching out here, and then that's still a possible miss slot. Tatsugiri Droopy form switching in here once again, activating Commander, but this time it's with its partner Pokemon Dondozo, who is at full health and maybe not 4 or 5 HP like it was after turn 1 of game 1, getting those boost +2 to each of its attacks. If Dondozo had stored power, it would also be incredibly comfortable right now.
Please don't manifest that.
Don't speak that into existence, right?
Yeah. I think the silver lining here, if you're Ashton as well, is that the Arcanine is gone. And so there's no chance for, that's a big target.
That Tatsugiri switching in means that it doesn't take a stored power here, but you still kind of save yourself a little bit with fake out, right?
Yeah.
Because now you have the opportunity to do it again.
Yeah, I mean, that is a pretty safe play. You cover the Tatsugiri switch in with the fake out there, so the Dondozo doesn't get an attack off. But like I was saying, the Arcanine is gone, so there's no way to mitigate physical damage into this Espathra anymore. And considering that 2 of Ashton's 3 remaining Pokemon are physical attackers, that's nice for him. That stored power going into the Tatsugiri switch-in clearly would have knocked out the Iron Hands, a massive base power psychic attack into that fighting type. But even now, we're up to 8 boosts, 4 speed, 2 each of special attack and special defense, which is 180 base power. So that number just keeps climbing, and I don't know where it can save you. I'm very curious to see how much damage a stored power will do to this Dondozo.
Iron Hand switching out here brings in the Amoonguss, probably not trying to take an Earthquake if it can help it, you know? Amoonguss also could do some redirection if need be. A Spothra just going to protect this turn, getting another boost. You have to imagine here, right? Kazuki really knows exactly what he may need in terms of the number of boosts for the base power to knock out Dondozo. That's probably something that you prepare for, right? So taking this Earthquake means you at least get that boost again into your speed stat. Amoonguss can handle this pretty well. Possibly go for a Spore, activate that Chesto Berry early, and then force the Dondozo to be in a position where it cannot rest. It could also Rage Powder. It could Pollen Puff into a Spothra as well if it really feels the need to get that damage.
This is a really safe spot for Kazuki. I think there's no way that, barring a critical hit, of course, there's no way this Amoonguss gets knocked out by one more attack. And I doubt Espathra gets knocked out by an Earthquake. A Wave Crash could do it, but again, we do know it's Terra Water, so there's a very good defensive option here for Kazuki, which looks like we're going to be seeing right now. So I think this is a great spot for Kazuki. You do still have speed advantage over Dondozo, which is something that you can't say very often. And a combination of 2 stored powers might be able to do the trick. Pollen Puff to keep yourself healthy. I really like Kazuki's spot here.
Yeah, really cool to be saving that Terra really late in the game, right? You don't use it when you have an opposite Iron Hands, but now using it when you can click this stored power. Oh,
okay.
That doesn't do as much as I would have wanted.
Yeah, me too.
Dondozo's Earthquake avoiding the Tatsugiri, hitting into the Protect of the Amoonguss. We'll go into this Espathra here. Physical damage on a Pokemon that hasn't done any physical boost, but a Pollen Puff here definitely helps, I think, with this Leftovers. Or you could Protect next turn, get another Leftovers boost.
Yeah.
And then you can probably handle another one.
That's gonna be very close. That Earthquake did 88 damage, and the Espathra sitting at 92. So I think if you're Kazuki, it's gonna be a bit of a risk to go for something like a stored power and a Pollen Puff, because if that Earthquake is possibly a damage roll, that could be pretty detrimental. Like you said, I truly expected that stored power to do a lot more. That was a huge base power move.
We hyped that up a lot.
We did. Well, it's like, so it still did a good chunk. Like, that's significant damage, especially when Espathra's whole thing is boosting its stats and you can't make use of that with Unaware. So it's non-negligible damage for sure. And if you were able to get a Pollen Puff off here, you were sitting very pretty. It's just a little bit of a risk here because, you know, again, we can't mitigate that physical damage anymore, and Espathra's going to be really close to getting knocked out by one more Earthquake.
Rage Powder from the Amoonguss. Espathra once again clicking stored power. Oh, critical hit! Gets the knockout this turn. That is a huge lifeline for Kazuki. Really tough for Ashton here to now force this Tatsugiri out onto the field. We're never going to know if it was a damage roll or not on that Earthquake. Really, man, that is, I mean, I'm sure that is a lucky break there. Iron Hands can come out now. It can do super effective damage, but you still have Amoonguss.
You do have Amoonguss, and you have the +2 special defense Espathra into the Tatsugiri. Is looking all but over in Kazuki's favor now. Like, we would have had, you know, +20 base power and that stored power, but given the damage you did before, that certainly would not make up the difference between a 2-hit KO and a 3-hit KO on that Dondozo. So a bit of a lucky break there for Kazuki. Again, possibly wouldn't have mattered. Like, maybe the Earthquake doesn't knock it out, but if you're Kazuki there, you certainly take that. You don't have to deal with the possible roll chances instead.
Kazuki's been playing very offensively.
Yes.
Not a lot of, you know, like taking slow down. A lot of plays where it's like, if this works, then I win the game. Espathra protecting this turn. Amoonguss also going to be protecting. You at least see what the choice lock is as well for Tatsugiri. You have to assume it's probably Muddy Water to try and get accuracy drops here. Fake out into the Espathra. No go this turn thanks to those protects. Tatsugiri actually locks into Draco Meteor this turn. Needs that big damage to get those knockouts and secure those.
And unfortunately, if you are Tentagear, you can't Muddy Water drop the Espathra before it attacks at least once, because we are at, I believe, +6 speed now. There's no more speed boost.
The game's looking a bit sloppy.
Muddy Water to try and get accuracy drops here. Fake out into the Espathra, no go this turn thanks to those protects. Tachyzagiri actually locks into Draco Meteor this turn, needs that big damage to get those knockouts and secure those.
Unfortunately, if you are Tentagear, you can't Muddy Water drop the Espathra before it attacks at least once. We are at, I believe, +6 speed now. There's no more speed boost even occurring. This should be pretty locked. I think a stored power is certainly enough to knock out the Iron Hands here. And regardless, I'll just go straight for Tatsugiri. I mean, that's fair too.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to knock out either one,
Right.
most likely, right?
Yeah.
You can get a pretty comfy Pollen Puff off here, but Wild Charge into the Espathra. It's enough to pick up the knockout. That's physical damage on a Pokemon that's gotten special defense boosts the entire game, right? If you're sending in big physical attackers, that's probably the right Pokemon to have. Amoonguss here, and we know as well, right? Iron Hands in back.
Yep.
Things could be a little bit slower, but having this Pollen Puff super effective damage definitely helps. Wild Charge is going to provide recoil instead. You have Drain Punch if you're, I believe for Ashen also has that Drain Punch if I'm not mistaken.
it's close
Actually, no,
combat.
he doesn't. He's close combat. So he actually cannot find a way to heal up any of this damage, whereas on Kazuki's side, you can just click Drain Punch, and even if you're only healing negligible damage, it's still damage.
Yeah, and you also have the option to side power, which Ashton does not, and so it might be a little bit of a slower end of the game, but Kazuki just making sure he doesn't, make any decisions that could possibly lose him the game, making sure that Tatsugiri gets eliminated off the bat. Certainly the more threatening damage option from either of the two. Ashton not wanting to maybe take the 3 or 4 turns and just save everyone some time here, and Kazuki taking this battle 2 games to 0.
Yeah, Kazuki already now at 3-0, so a great start to their Saturday. Ashton still at 2-1. Again, players need a 7-2 record to move on to day 2. That is the cutoff. There is
Yes.
you cannot do worse than that, or else
No.
there's only a chance you go home with CP. With the players that go 6-3, not all of them will actually even get championship points today. So having that 7-2 not only locks you for day 2, locks you for championship points. So Ashton going to have to fight through the rest of the day.
you doing, sir? Would you be looking for the sex offender 11s or?
No.
No? What can I help you find? Oh, well, sir, I am with the Predatory Investigation Unit here, as you can see. And you would be Calvin, right?
No, I'm Nathan.
Nathan? So would this be your picture right here?
Yes.
It sure looks like you. Now, do you want to have a conversation about what you're here doing?
I was going to meet her and talk to her, and that was
No,
it.
we report all of our findings to the police, sir, so you should just be honest here. You were going to do what now?
I was going to talk to her, hang out with her, and that was that.
And how old is the girl you're here to meet?
She originally said she was 18, then she said she was 13.
Well, I don't have
I was
any...
going to talk to her and then try to
Okay.
convince her that it's not a good idea to do this.
That's what you were going to do. Well, here
ma'am.
she says she's... Did you call me ma'am?
Sir.
Okay, so you want to get that right before we go any further, Calvin.
Now, it's one thing to be a 40-year-old man and be meeting up with a 13-year-old girl, but to address me as a ma'am instead of sir, I mean, that's just where I draw the line, you know. I mean, I didn't spend 6 months growing this beard for nothing, you know. Calvin clearly was not thinking clearly in this instance.
Now, she does say that she's 13.
Yep.
And you say it's okay, okay? And
It's
then
okay to talk.
it's okay to talk, but is it okay to...
I
apparently
don't
it's
want
okay to meet, too. You don't want anything, is what you say. Well, here you say that pregnant girls at the start of the first year of high school are the hottest.
I thought
So-
I was saying it as a joke.
What's
I
so...
meant nothing
It
by
was a joke.
I meant nothing by it. I mean nothing by it.
So what about a 13-year-old girl being pregnant is attractive to you? Help me understand
It's
it.
really not. I want to explain to girls and people that it's, look, if you go off and do this, it's not great. Yes, some guys feel it's attractive. I do
But
not.
you're one of those guys.
I do not feel it's attractive.
Well, you said it
Yes,
here,
I did say
Calvin.
that. Yes, I did.
So,
I did say that.
so why would you say that though?
Just to get a response. I like
Just a
I like doing
response.
research on what people respond to.
So you're
always
more
have.
like a psychologist. in a
Kind
way.
of. I
Okay.
just don't have the degree. I
just
want
don't
to know
have
what
it.
people respond to.
So
And
you-
I want to just talk to like,
Well,
hey,
So you have
We
a
see
bunch
what
of
you respond
data
to.
and you-
I don't have a whole lot of data other than up here. I
Okay.
talk to a lot of people
So you
all day
don't
long.
take notes while you're doing
I
this?
just take mental notes and
Just mental
right.
notes.
I
Okay.
don't want nothing. I just want to explain to people that this can happen. It's easy.
Okay.
I don't want nothing.
Well,
from
we see that. We see how easy it is, you know,
Right.
for adults to come and meet
Right.
up.
That's
I mean,
what
we're
I'm
trying
saying.
to teach you that it's not okay.
I don't want nothing from it.
Nothing.
I don't
Well,
mean nothing.
Why
from
did you
this.
say that you could date her mom and then make out with her when she's gone, a 13-year-old
I
girl?
wanted to see what her responses would be. That's what I'm.
And what kind of response were you looking for there?
I was
Calvin?
looking for. Hey, that's not really what I want. That's not right. You know.
Well, here you said that would be
Change that.
awesome. Here you said that would be awesome.
Right, I did. I did say it would be awesome. In terms of looking at the picture of the parent, I don't want it to be awesome, but if I could make out with you as a teen boy, I would feel
A girl in
great.
this case.
Right.
You're talking to a
Or
13-year-old
teen
girl.
I'm not looking for the situation.
You say if your mom looks like you, then you know I'm in love.
Right.
And then you say you say that you really want her to know a feels like inside of her making a baby is what you say.
And I wanted to see what response she gives back.
So this whole thing was just so you could see responses.
Yes, that's
And you had no intention of actually following up on it.
No,
It's very inappropriate, Calvin.
Do you do these experiments a lot?
Because we do these experiments a lot.
No,
experiments
just
a lot.
once in a blue moon. I just
Blue moon.
So what part of the phone conversation was experiment then?
Because we do have a whole recorded phone call with you and this 13-year-old girl.
Right. I was just to talk.
Just to talk.
To see what kind of responses she would give back.
Just to talk about how you don't agree with the
Right.
government saying that 13 isn't
Right.
old enough, but you think it's old enough.
Right.
Because I recall that.
To me,
Now, Calvin claimed that he was this sort of researcher, and he was asking these sexually charged questions to this 13-year-old girl in the name of science, basically, in the name of research, to get certain responses. And he wasn't going to follow through and do anything, is what he said. You know, from the get-go, from the moment he started talking, all that was running through my mind was, Calvin, this experiment you're running is illegal as f***. You know? Jeez. There was a phone call that occurred with Calvin and who he thought to be a 13-year-old girl. In that phone call, he did express how the government says that the age 13 isn't legal because a girl that young can't consent to sexual acts, which is very, very true. But on the phone call, Calvin explained how he very much disagreed with that and that 13 was in fact old enough. So just in his mind, he really thinks that a girl 13 years old should be able to consent sexually. It's really mind-boggling the way some of these guys think. You know, I mean, where are they getting this logic?
I agree with the government as it's not at all. It is not right.
That's not what you said on the phone the other day, Calvin.
I understand. Let me explain.
Please.
I understand that's what I said.
Please.
I'm chasing what she would say, what other people would say. I'm going to tell you a line, okay? I want to know what your response is. And then I'm going to season you with a different response to see if I can come back with the same answers.
Okay, what kind of trick are you playing here, Calvin?
There is no trick.
Okay.
I'm just...
Well, let me get through this first. Here you say that you would love to be looking deep in her eyes when you blank and just stare into those eyes deep because they're so beautiful. And you want to know what her panties look like. So it looks to me like you were talking about having sex with this girl, full-on intercourse. And it looks like you have this pregnancy kink and you want to get her pregnant from what it looks like.
Right.
Well, first help me understand what's so attractive about, a 13-year-old girl being pregnant. I mean,
there is nothing. There's absolutely nothing attractive.
Why say it in the conversation?
My conversation upon that is to see what her response is.
Just to get a response.
Do I feel like I'm going to be sexy? Do I feel like I'm going to be cute?
I feel like you're going to be predatorial.
I have no
That's what it looks like.
I have no intentions to, like I said.
What's your name?
Calvin.
Calvin. Why would you do this experiment?
Because I have a few younger family members, and I want them to understand. I'm trying to...
Would you say that this experiment is going a bit wrong, Calvin?
Yes.
A bit south now?
Yes.
Okay. What was the end goal of the experiment with a 13-year-old girl actually was here?
Is just to convince her that this, how bad people can convince you to do something and walk, do what you got to do and walk.
So why'd you meet her in person to do that? You couldn't have told her that on the phone?
Because I wanted to see if she would meet me.
Why?
Why though, Calvin?
Okay.
Why does a 13-year-old girl need to meet a 40-year-old man?
Because
For
I
what?
wanted to see if that's what her intentions were.
You could just ask her.
What was her
hey,
intentions?
To me, her
intentions were to meet up, hang out, talk, and explain to me that her dad passed away, supposedly.
Okay.
And help her convince him.
You said you wanted to see if it was her intention.
She would actually meet somebody. And apparently she did not. So
Well, apparently she was going to, and apparently you do because you're here to meet her.
Right. And I wanted to understand.
Why would she do that, though?
Well, that's what I wanted to know.
More importantly, why would you do that? Why would you talk like this and then try to meet up with her?
Know.
And then she sent a picture of both her and her young friend, and you say, I won't lie, you and your 13-year-old friend would both look good pregnant.
And I wanted to see what my response would have been. Like I said, all I'm after is responses.
You're just after responses.
That's it.
Well, I got to tell you, Calvin, every action has an
I'm not after nothing.
equal reaction, okay?
I don't
You're up
want
to something for
you're
sure.
here.
Well, let's go back to that trick you were going to, the psychology trick you mentioned before. Where were we going with that?
It was just to talk.
Oh, so the whole thing was just to talk.
I wanted this, like I said, I know this happens a lot.
What happens?
People meet girls, come out, hang out,
meet girls,
do things, and there's not
sexual things.
Specifically
sexual things.
Right.
Is that what you mean?
And I don't want that. I have younger siblings.
You have younger siblings. How old are your siblings?
Well, both my stepsisters are older, so they'd actually be my nieces and nephews.
Okay. How old are they?
14 and 17, 22, and then a couple of them have kids. But I want them to understand.
And how often are you around these minors, Calvin?
Not very often.
Not very often?
No.
Well, I would hope so.
I live by myself.
It really should be never.
I live by myself.
And do you talk to them like this? Well, why not? What makes it okay for you to talk to a 13-year-old girl like this?
Usually I sit with my sisters and them, and we talk.
Okay.
And, this is bad. I try to show them that you can't do this stuff. And we've watched it.
We see you're doing it.
Actually crying, right?
He's right, Calvin.
Okay, I didn't know.
You didn't know it was a hold on.
I didn't really know that part was a.
Let's back up here, Calvin.
Research it.
Now you didn't know. You're telling me you didn't know that it was illegal to go online and talk up a 13-year-old girl like this with these messages, and proceed to meet up with her for sex, presumably. You didn't know that was illegal.
Yes, I know it is illegal. Yes, to that part. But what is wrong with trying to help convince somebody that this is a wrong idea?
So
Don't come out and meet.
Calvin, why didn't you do that through the text?
You could have told her don't come out and meet, but instead you're here to meet her.
Because sometimes I feel texts get interpreted in the wrong way, in the wrong ones.
I think we got the message across clearly what you're here to do.
Now, at this point, this experiment that Calvin was conducting is just completely backfiring. I mean, blowing up in his face, And according to Calvin, him actually physically meeting up with this girl in public was also a part of the experiment. He wanted to see if she would meet, for one, and then kind of see where her mind was from what he was saying. Now, being that Calvin has nieces and nephews who he says are 14 years old, right around the age of the girl he was there to meet, you gotta wonder, is anything funny going on there? What's stopping him from having these sexually charged experiments with his nieces and nephews? I'm not accusing anyone of anything here, but it is a concern. It really is a concern.
I think we got the message across clearly what you were here to do.
Can you go to that one with the tracker message that he said?
Yes, so the ovulation.
Yeah,
right, the ovulation. I did forget to touch base on that one. Trying to see which one that was, Calvin. Oh, here it is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Here you say that you should load a period tracker on your phone and see when your ovulation day is.
Right.
So why did you want her to do that? Was that part of the pregnancy thing?
That was just part of, do you look at that pregnancy thing that I was explaining? I know a lot of females.
What business does a 13-year-old girl have to look at a pregnancy thing like that?
There is none.
She doesn't need to be.
What her answers would have been.
Okay.
And that's.
Okay.
Sir, you just randomly
Calvin,
had that pop in your head, like what's it called, a period tracker?
A period tracker.
To see what she would say?
Yeah, we're talking and
Just an experiment.
I just want to know what her answer was going to say. That's it. Like I said,
Calvin, come on. It's just not adding up, Calvin.
You expect me to believe that?
You really expect us to believe that, Calvin?
No.
Do you think the police would believe it?
No.
He asked this girl if she keeps track of her period, okay? And then says that she should get an ovulation device of some sort to keep track of her periods, You just gotta wonder why
PlayStation is currently in a very powerful position compared to Xbox. If we're talking about a head-to-head, Microsoft has been taking a lot of big L's with the